He was one of the most powerful men in America, a celebrated billionaire at the helm of the prestigious Langford Dynamics technology empire. There wasn't a single thing Michael Langford couldn't command, from the smallest internal memo to multi-billion-dollar deals that stretched across continents. But that morning, as the harsh California sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his villa, bearing the dry heat typical of a western U.S. summer, he lost control entirely. Today was the day Michael was slated to sign a $500 million contract with a major Chinese investment consortium, what the U.S. business press had already dubbed the deal of the century. The outcome of this meeting would not only determine the fate of his corporation, but also the reputation of Michael Langford himself on the global stage. Everything had proceeded smoothly until 8:58 a.m. Michael stood in the center of the opulent conference room, the finest in his entire estate. The decor struck a balance between classical elegance and modern minimalism. Silk drapes hanging softly beside towering windows, their folds catching the light and casting patterns on the polished Italian marble floor. On the massive conference table lay imported Icelandic mineral water bottles and meticulously arranged bilingual English-Chinese briefing binders at each high-backed leather chair. Everything was perfect, except for one small but critical detail, the Chinese English interpreter. "Where is he?" Michael frowned, his gaze flicking anxiously toward the main door. He just called, sir," stammered his assistant Bianca Ellis, a blonde Ivy League graduate and longtime right hand, her voice trailing off as if afraid her words might shatter the last vestiges of calm on her boss's face. "Call?" Michael's voice rose. "This isn't a middle school group project, Bianca. This is a $500 million contract." Bianca lowered her eyes. "He says he's been food poisoned and is in the hospital. I've contacted every top translation agency in San Francisco, but no one is available for at least another hour." Michael glared at the gold Rolex sparkling on his wrist. Each tick seemed like a blade cutting into his pride. In a matter of minutes, the Chinese delegation would arrive, and he knew they'd prepared down to the last detail. One tiny misstep, and they'd walk away, ending months of painstaking negotiations. He yanked his phone from his breast pocket and began dialing again. Executive interpreters, premium language services, freelance specialists. Each call was met with the same helpless apology. With every failed connection, his frustration surged. Suddenly, the main door swung open. 3 impeccably dressed Chinese executives walked in, their tailored suits and controlled expressions radiating authority. Their assistant, a young woman in a smart black suit, offered Michael a cold, polite bow. Michael forced a welcoming smile, though his eyes betrayed his panic. He moved to shake each man's hand, stretching out the moment as if in vain hopes of buying time. Then the lead investor, Mr. Zhang Wei, swept his gaze across the room and asked in clipped English, "Where is your interpreter, Mr. Langford?" A cold sweat trickled down Michael's spine. Mr. Zhang's eyes, already steely, grew even more impatient. "A slight hiccup, Mr. Zhang," Michael lied, striving for composure. "He'll be here shortly." Mr. Zhang was silent for a moment, then murmured in Mandarin to his colleagues, words Michael couldn't understand, but the growing irritation in their voices was unmistakable. One glanced at his watch, then back at Michael, his face unreadable yet clearly disappointed. Michael felt the world around him shatter. His customary confidence evaporated. Never before had he been so out of control. In just a few short minutes, the $500 million deal, his hard-won prestige, and his very pride hung by a thread. Near the doorway to the kitchen, a young woman with deep brown skin and tightly coiled hair tucked into a neat bun stood quietly, observing the scene. She wore the light gray uniform of household staff, but there was something in her eyes, a strange, steady light, when she caught snippets of Michael's exchange with the Chinese investors. Her name was Emma Johnson, and in that moment Emma knew she could no longer remain silent. A bold, life-altering decision was taking shape inside her, and it would change everything for her, for Michael, and for everyone in that room. Emma inhaled deeply, steeled herself, and prepared to step out of the shadows. In the corner of the room near the kitchen entrance, Emma Johnson, the young black housekeeper, stood perfectly still, quietly taking in every moment with eyes that seemed to pierce through the tension. No one paid her any mind. To Michael Langford, the entire world had collapsed into his own frantic gaze and the steely impatience of the Chinese delegation. Clad in her pale gray uniform, Emma almost blended into the drab wall behind her, a forgotten silhouette in that grand space. From the very day she began working at the Langford estate, Emma had been treated as invisible. No one ever cared to learn her name or noticed when her hands trembled from hours spent polishing the marble staircases. Her presence was reduced to a silent, insignificant cog in the machinery of luxury. Each morning she swept through the opulent corridors, buffed the massive glass panes, and wiped down every crystal step. Yet not once did someone pause to meet her eyes or offer even a simple "good morning." Over time, Emma grew accustomed to her invisibility, accepting it as her lot in life. But today, that invisibility turned into an unbearable weight. For the first time in years, she found that the silence which had once comforted her now felt absurd, even painful. She listened to every strained word between Michael and Mr. Zhang, each pressured syllable, every thudding heartbeat of Michael's panic, and the delegation's disappointed glances resonated in her mind. The clipped Mandarin of the investors sent her pulse racing, reviving memories of her university days, muttering complex Chinese phrases under her breath long into the night. Images from her past flickered before her like an old film she had never dared to rewatch. Her father, a linguistics professor, had pinned so many hopes on his talented daughter. Emma had been an outstanding student, passionate about foreign languages, especially Chinese, and she once dreamed of a career as a professional interpreter. But life rarely bends to our wishes. When her father died suddenly in an accident, everything fell apart. Emma gave up her college education to care for her younger sister, Hannah. From that day forward, she hid her gift, surrendered to fate, and lived each day in quiet anonymity. Yet today, standing in that luxurious yet stifling room, seeing Michael Langford, one of the most powerful men alive, desperately seeking someone to save this deal, her heart pounded with uncontainable urgency. A small, insistent voice rose in her mind, urging her to break free from her comfort zone, to shatter the invisible barrier that had enclosed her life for so long. Still, an invisible fear held her back. If she spoke up, there would be no going back to the safety of obscurity. She knew that by stepping into the light, she'd invite scrutiny, gossip, even hostility from people like Bianca, those who could never accept someone of her station standing beside them as an equal. They would work to undermine her, reminding her of the place she was supposed to occupy. Emma clenched the microfiber cloth in her hand, her palm slick with sweat. She glanced at Michael struggling with his halting words, battling the delegation's mounting impatience. Bianca hovered nearby, her cold gaze and curled lip betraying disdain as she whispered contempt to a colleague. Bianca's arrogance and indifference cut at Emma's resolve, fueling it even more fiercely. Then Mr. Zhang rose, adjusted his tie, and prepared to leave in utter disappointment. In that moment, something deep within Emma surged up, a power stronger than any fear, a gift from her late father, a spark from the dreams she'd buried long ago. Emma drew in a steady breath, and for the first time since she'd come here, her voice broke the charged silence. "Mr. Langford, if you need a Chinese interpreter, I can help." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Every pair of eyes swung to her, a mix of shock and skepticism as though they'd only just noticed Emma existed. Michael turned toward her, his expression a blend of surprise and confusion, unable to believe what he'd just heard. What did you say, Emma?" he asked, his brow furrowed in doubt. Emma mustered all her courage, lifted her chin, and met his gaze. "I said I can interpret Chinese. Please, let me try." In that moment, Emma knew she had shed the cloak of invisibility that had hidden her for years, and embarked on a journey whose outcome she could not yet foresee. But in her heart, she understood that now, there was no choice but to move forward. The conference room plunged into absolute silence the moment Emma finished speaking. The tension, already thick as molasses, grew denser than ever. Every gaze snapped toward the young woman who, mere seconds before, had been no more than part of the room's decor. Michael Langford, the powerful CEO who'd weathered countless corporate storms, now stood uncharacteristically flustered by Emma's bold intrusion. "Emma, you're saying you can interpret Chinese?" Michael repeated, as if struggling to believe his own ears. Before Emma could answer, a cold, mocking laugh cut through the hush. Bianca Ellis, Michael's closest assistant. "How ridiculous, Mr. Langford," she sneered. "A housekeeper who speaks Chinese? Maybe she's been watching too many soap operas." Bianca didn't bother hiding the contempt in her eyes when she looked at Emma. Someone like Bianca, an Ivy League graduate proud of her elite pedigree and flawless resume, couldn't tolerate the idea of a mere maid standing on equal footing. In her world, hierarchies were clear-cut, and Emma was blatantly attempting to upend them with one outrageous claim. A few of Michael's other aides stifled giggles. Curious, derisive glances flicked Emma's way, making her heart pound as if someone had squeezed her chest. Yet Emma didn't flinch. She stood tall, meeting each doubting stare head-on, especially Bianca's haughty glare. Taking a steadying breath, Emma spoke in a clear, confident tone. "Sir, I am very serious. I can interpret Chinese. Please give me a chance." Michael stared at her in stunned silence, wild thoughts racing through his mind. Part of him wanted to dismiss her outright. He doubted her ability and didn't want to risk the company's reputation on an anonymous housekeeper. Yet desperation, and the looming threat of losing a $500 million deal, weighed heavily on him. If he refused Emma, he was almost certain to lose the opportunity of a lifetime. Before Michael could decide, Mr. Zhang Wei, head of the Chinese delegation, murmured something decisive in Mandarin to his colleagues. Though Michael couldn't understand the words, Zhang's cool impatience was unmistakable. At that moment, Emma stepped forward. This time, her voice rang out not in English, but in flawless Mandarin. "Mr. Zhang, I apologize for the delay. We've encountered an unavoidable issue with our official interpreter. If you will allow me, I am ready to assist so we can proceed with the meeting." Her precise, effortless Mandarin swept through the room like a sudden gust of wind. Mr. Zhang and his team looked astonished. Zhang turned to her, his sharp features softening into surprise mixed with approval. In Mandarin, he replied, "Your Mandarin is excellent. We are pleased you can support today's meeting." Emma inclined her head politely, as though she'd done this 1,000 times before. "Thank you, Mr. Zhang. I will do my utmost not to disappoint you." Silence settled once more, this time without a single snicker. Bianca stood frozen, her face drained of color, a mix of shock and fury. She gripped her folder so tightly her knuckles whitened, her pride wounded by Emma's unexpected display. Michael met Emma's gaze with newfound respect, still in disbelief, but begrudgingly impressed. His voice was low, reluctant, but firm. "All right, Emma. Please take that seat and begin interpreting." Emma walked to the empty chair reserved for the interpreter and sat down, each step carrying the weight of countless silent days, years she'd spent living invisibly. For the first time in her life, she realized she was stepping out of the shadows into the light, a light she had abandoned long ago out of fear and self-doubt. Calmly opening the binder before her, she looked up at the guests from across the Pacific, her eyes ablaze with determination, confidence, and strength. In that moment, she knew there was no turning back, only the path forward, filled with challenges and risks, but unmistakably hers to claim. And no matter what came next, this was the day Emma Johnson officially emerged into the light, the day the world would discover she had never been just a housekeeper. The moment Emma sat in the interpreter's chair, the atmosphere in the conference room changed instantly. Michael's initial skepticism gave way to a mix of curiosity and concern as he watched her closely, searching for any sign of hesitation or fumbling. Yet all he saw was a calm, focused face and unwavering eyes fixed on the Chinese delegation. Emma gently opened the binder before her, her eyes scanning the clauses in a single, smooth sweep, her breathing steady as though this were just one more assignment in a long line of many. After a brief pause, she looked up, her gaze bright, and spoke in fluent, measured tones. "Let's begin with the first clause. Mr. Langford would like to extend his sincere thanks for your trust in and selection of Langford Dynamics for this special partnership. He hopes this marks the start of a long, mutually prosperous relationship." From her very first words, Michael was astonished, not only by the perfection of her Mandarin, which sounded as though delivered by a top-tier professional interpreter, but by the convincing confidence she exuded. In an instant, Emma had transformed from an anonymous housekeeper into a poised, intelligent, and compelling woman. The Chinese investors nodded in approval. Mr. Zhang Wei, the typically stern, inscrutable leader, broke into a rare smile. He responded warmly, even with a hint of admiration. "We are very impressed by Langford Dynamics' thorough preparation. In particular, we are delighted and pleasantly surprised to find such an outstanding interpreter in your employ. It is rare to encounter a young American so fluent in Mandarin." Emma rendered his words into English with precision and finesse, leaving Michael almost unable to believe his ears. He shot a quick glance at Bianca, his ever-present assistant. Bianca stood silent, lips pressed tight, her discomfort plain to see. Her eyes, cold and hard, betrayed her irritation and resentment at the investor's praise for Emma. The remainder of the meeting proceeded seamlessly. Emma did more than translate. She modulated her tone and chose her words carefully to diffuse any potential misunderstandings. Whenever a particularly dense passage appeared, she paused for a moment to gently clarify the true intent behind each complex provision. She performed with such professionalism that Michael nearly forgot the very woman saving this hundreds of millions dollar deal was the same girl who'd been sweeping his marble steps just moments before. After nearly 2 hours of discussion, the meeting drew to a close. Mr. Zhang rose and stepped over to Michael, extending his hand with genuine warmth. "Thank you, Mr. Langford, for today's productive session. We are truly impressed and eager to finalize this contract as soon as possible. And please, keep Ms. Emma by your side. She is an invaluable asset." Michael glanced at Emma, still seated, offering a polite smile. He returned Zhang's handshake sincerely. "I will certainly do that, Mr. Zhang. Thank you and your team for your cooperation." As the Chinese delegation filed out, Leaving only the Langford Dynamics staff behind, Michael turned immediately to Emma, his eyes full of wonder and unasked questions. "Emma, I honestly don't know what to say," he began, striving to keep his tone steady. "But I can't help being curious. How did you become so proficient in Mandarin? Why did I never know this?" Emma hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering with a brief sadness as memories flooded back. After a quiet heartbeat, she spoke softly, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "Mr. Langford, I was once a university student majoring in languages. I dreamed of becoming a professional interpreter, especially for Mandarin. But after my father's sudden death, my family's situation became difficult, and I had to leave school to work as a housekeeper to support my younger sister." The room fell silent again, this time in admiration and empathy. Michael looked at Emma with a depth of feeling he'd never shown before, seeing her not as an invisible servant, but as a person with a moving story and remarkable talent. Only Bianca remained unmoved. Standing in a corner, her expression darkened further. Her nails dug into her palms, her eyes burning with a mix of anger and jealousy. To Bianca, Emma had shifted from nuisance to direct threat to her own position and standing in the company. In Bianca's mind, secret schemes to undermine Emma were already taking shape, but in that moment, all she could do was watch Emma shine and feel powerless and humiliated. As for Emma, for the first time in years, she realized she could truly do more, rewrite the story of her life. And today was the first day of a brand new chapter, one she had once thought would never come. From the moment Emma revealed her hidden talent to Michael and his partners, her world began to shift onto an entirely new trajectory. The Chinese investors' praise echoed relentlessly in Bianca's mind, each commendation feeling like a sharpened blade slicing through her pride. Bianca, who had always prided herself on being Michael Langford's most trusted assistant, now found herself thrust into the shadows, a darkness she had never imagined she'd face. That very evening, after everyone else had left the office, Bianca remained at her desk, her face tense and cold in the glow of her computer screen. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she meticulously reviewed every line of the contract destined for the Chinese delegation. Fueled by jealousy and fear of losing her influence, Bianca decided to act recklessly. She opened the final version of the Mandarin contract, slated to go out first thing in the morning, and conceived a bold, dangerous plan. Swiftly, she altered a key clause on intellectual property rights, tweaking a few words so that it would clearly disadvantage the investors. The change was subtle enough to escape casual notice, but significant enough to shatter their trust if discovered. And, of course, when the mistake surfaced, Emma Johnson, the interpreter, would be blamed and swiftly removed. With a cold smile, Bianca saved the file and shut down her computer. Her high heels clicked sharply down the deserted hallway, each step sounding like the drumbeat of her looming revenge. The next morning, Emma arrived at the office early to prepare for the day's meeting. As she stepped into her workspace, she froze. There, on her desk, lay the freshly printed Mandarin contract. A sense of unease knotted in her stomach. Picking up the document, she skimmed through its pages, and her instincts, honed by years of studying language, immediately flagged something amiss. She paused at the intellectual property clause, rereading it repeatedly. The language had been altered, vague, dangerous phrasing that posed a serious risk to the partnership. Emma's heart pounded. Someone was trying to sabotage the negotiation. But who and why? Familiar faces from the office floated through her mind, yet none stood out as a clear suspect. Except one, Bianca. She recalled Bianca's mocking laugh, her cold disdain just the day before, but Emma lacked concrete proof. At that moment, Michael entered, his usual composed, dignified self. He didn't notice Emma's troubled expression and gently asked, "Everything all right, Emma? You look worried." Startled, Emma forced a smile. "Nothing to worry about, Mr. Langford. I'm just doing a final review of the documents for today's meeting." Michael smiled back, completely unaware of the crisis. "I have complete faith in you. What you did yesterday proved we'd underestimated you, Emma." He patted her shoulder reassurance and walked off toward his office, leaving Emma clutching the weighty contract. Panic and determination warred in her chest. She couldn't let this sabotage succeed, otherwise, everything she had fought for yesterday would collapse in an instant. The meeting was only hours away. Emma took a deep breath and resolved to unmask whoever was behind this plot. No matter who it was, she would find the truth. If she failed to expose the culprit, her hard-won credibility could vanish in a heartbeat. Across the hall, Bianca stood behind the glass door, watching Emma's every move. A malicious gleam sparkled in her eyes as she saw Emma's worried frown. Bianca smiled to herself, certain her scheme was unfolding perfectly. In just a few hours, Emma would pay the price for daring to step into a world her likes had ruled for so long. But Bianca didn't know that Emma would not be so easily defeated. The once invisible Maid now burned with fierce resolve and resilience. She wasn't just fighting to hold on to the position she'd earned, she was defending her dignity, her worth, and the dreams she had sacrificed to protect. With the contract clutched in her hands, Emma's gaze sharpened. She vowed that no matter who engineered this betrayal, she would expose them and make them pay dearly. The moment the next meeting began, the conference room filled once again with solemn faces. Emma sat beside Michael, her heart racing faster than usual, her hand trembling ever so slightly as she flipped through the pages. Even though she'd anticipated the dangerous clause in the contract, she still felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her chest at the thought of what was about to unfold. Across the table, Bianca sat silently, her eyes fixed on Emma. A thrill of triumph coursed through her. She was certain her plan would work, and in just a few minutes, Emma would be the target of everyone's scorn. Michael spoke in his measured tone, giving a brief overview of the meeting's agenda. Emma heard the confidence in his voice when he introduced her to the Chinese delegation. "Today, we're honored to continue our discussions with the invaluable assistance of our interpreter, Miss Emma Johnson, a professional you praised highly at our last meeting." Mr. Jiang Wei nodded approvingly and regarded Emma with warmth and goodwill. Yet that very look only deepened the weight of pressure on her. Inside, she wrestled with whether to call out the discrepancy immediately or wait until she was certain. The meeting proceeded smoothly until Emma turned to the page containing the tampered clause. Her heart pounded as she read the intellectual property section aloud. Mr. Jiang frowned and interrupted her, his tone suddenly tense. "Wait a moment, Miss Johnson. That clause doesn't match what we agreed on previously." Michael flinched, casting a confused glance at Emma. Bianca feigned surprise, her mouth dropping open in feigned innocence. Emma drew a steadying breath and replied calmly, "Mr. Jiang, you're right. This clause does differ from the version we finalized earlier. Please allow me a moment to verify." A hush fell over the room. Emma rapidly compared the English and Chinese version side by side for everyone to see. After a few tense seconds, she lifted her head, her eyes resolute. This provision has indeed been altered. In the English version we agreed upon, the intellectual property rights are fair and balanced for both parties. But in this Mandarin draft, the wording has been changed to give Langford Dynamics an undue advantage. It appears a serious error, or perhaps deliberate alteration, occurred during contract preparation. Michael's surprise turned to shock as he stared at Emma in disbelief. "Emma, how did this happen? Who prepared this draft?" Before Emma could answer, Bianca sprang to her feet, feigning indignation. "Mr. Langford, Emma was the last person to review this contract. I think she owes us an explanation for why this discrepancy exists." Emma met Bianca's gaze without flinching. "I was indeed the final reviewer, but only this morning after yesterday's work was already complete. At that point, I noticed the discrepancy, and I can assure you this clause was changed after I finished yesterday's translation." Bianca's face went pale, but she forced a defiant tone. "So you're accusing someone else of making those edits? Are you blaming me, Emma?" Emma's voice was calm but sharp as a blade. "I'm not accusing anyone specifically. I'm simply stating that the contract was altered in a way that sabotages today's signing." Bianca faltered, her voice trembling as she avoided Emma's eyes. "Mr. Langford, you can't take these baseless accusations seriously. I would never—" Michael cut her off, his patience gone. He leveled a stern gaze at Bianca. "Bianca, show me the document revision history on your computer right now." Bianca's face drained of color. She hadn't expected Michael to demand that. She stammered, panicked. "But, Mr. Langford, Now, Bianca," Michael commanded. Hands shaking, Bianca opened her laptop. Her panic was unmistakable. For the first time in years, Michael realized the person beside him was not who he thought. Doubt settled firmly in his mind. Turning back to the delegation, he regained his composure. "Mr. Zhang, I sincerely apologize for this unfortunate incident. Fortunately, Emma spotted the issue before it could cause more damage. I assure you we will investigate this matter thoroughly and transparently." Mr. Zhang inclined his head and looked at Emma with genuine respect. "We're fortunate to have such a conscientious and honest interpreter on our team today." Michael nodded, his gratitude for Emma clear in his eyes. Bianca stood frozen, realizing her scheme had utterly failed. But deep inside, her resentment only grew, smoldering with the determination to strike again. The moment the investors departed, the tense atmosphere still hung over the entire office. Michael stood silently by the large window, his gaze distant as he stared out at the skyscrapers beyond, lost in deep reflection on everything that had just transpired. He had never felt so disappointed or so deeply betrayed, especially when the perpetrator turned out to be Bianca, his most trusted assistant. After a long pause, Michael turned and his eyes met Emma's, who stood quietly in the corner, waiting for some reaction from him. There was no reproach or pride in her expression, only calmness, as though she were still the same Emma he'd first met, making Michael feel all the more small and shallow. "Emma," he said softly, his tone unusually earnest, "could you spare me a few minutes in my private office?" Emma nodded gently and followed him down the wide hallway. It was her first time entering Michael Langford's private office, an exquisitely appointed space befitting a top-tier CEO. Everything gleamed and was impeccably organized, reflecting a man long proud of his ironclad control over every detail of his world. Michael gestured for her to sit in the chair opposite his desk. He took a deep breath, his eyes briefly clouded with regret as he looked at her. "Emma, first and foremost, I want to sincerely thank you for what you did today," he began, his voice slow and heartfelt. "Without you, we likely would have lost that crucial deal, and our reputation would have taken a serious hit." Emma nodded quietly, waiting for him to continue. He paused, then spoke again, his voice full of genuine remorse. "But more importantly, I want to apologize to you. I deeply regret that I've undervalued you and never given you the chance to showcase your true talents. I was wrong to place my trust in the wrong person." Emma looked up at him, eyes wide with genuine surprise, but also understanding. She replied softly, yet decisively, "Mr. Langford, what matters is that we overcame today's crisis. I've always believed that truth and integrity will prevail." Michael offered her a rare, warm smile. "That's right. And I think it's time we made some changes at this company. I've given it a lot of thought, and I'd like to make you a very special offer." Emma's curiosity flickered, but she remained composed. Michael continued, his tone resolute. "I want to appoint you as Langford Dynamics Director of International Coordination. I truly believe you deserve this role. You will oversee all communications and external relations, especially the critical international deals." Emma was stunned. This was something she had never even dreamed of as she quietly worked in the Langford household. She drew in a steadying breath, fighting to remain calm in the face of such a monumental shift. "I'm honored, Mr. Langford, but—" She hesitated for a moment, glancing down at her gray housekeeper uniform, then spoke gently. "I have one small condition. If you truly want to give me this position, I'd like to stop wearing the housekeeper uniform and enter through the front door like any other employee." Michael paused for a heartbeat, peering into Emma's eyes as he recognized the depth of her long-held hurt. A pang of guilt struck him, for he had unconsciously treated her as invisible for far too long. Now he understood that a person's true worth isn't measured by the uniform they wear or the door they use each morning. He nodded firmly, his voice full of resolve. "Of course, Emma, that's not just your right. It's something I should have done long ago. Starting today, you will be an integral part of this company, and no one will ever treat you differently again." Emma let out a relieved smile, her heart swelling with intense yet peaceful emotion. She knew that from this moment on, her life would turn a new page, a chapter where she would finally be recognized for her true abilities and worth. Outside the office, Bianca leaned in a hidden corner, watching Emma emerge from Michael's office with a triumphant, confident smile. Bianca clenched her fists, her eyes blazing with seething hatred. She knew she had failed this time, but deep down, she vowed the fight was far from over. As for Emma, today marked her official emergence from the shadows, becoming a free, empowered woman. A pivotal turning point had arrived, and from now on, nothing would stand in her way. Just minutes after Emma left Michael's office, Bianca stormed in without even knocking. The door slammed open so hard Michael jumped, turning in surprise. His eyes flickered with shock before hardening into a stern glare. Bianca stood there, eyes blazing, breath coming in ragged bursts, any trace of her usual composure gone. "Mr. Langford, I can't take this anymore." Bianca's voice cracked with anger. "You can't treat me like this." Michael frowned, his gaze icy as it settled on the woman he once trusted. "Bianca, calm down and tell me what you mean." Appointing Emma as Director of International Coordination, a lowly housekeeper who's only been here a few days, now in a role like that. What does she know that qualifies her? Bianca spat out, contempt dripping from every word. Michael clenched his fists, seeing Bianca's true colors for the first time. He spoke quietly, but with unshakable authority. "I will not tolerate you speaking about Emma with such disrespect. She has proven her capability. And you, Bianca, how do you explain your sabotage of the contract?" Bianca faltered for a moment, then yelled, "I didn't do anything. I've worked hard and been loyal for years. How dare you choose someone new over me? You must decide right now. It's either me or her." Michael stared her down, disappointment and resolve shining in his eyes. His voice was cold as steel. "Then you leave me no choice. The person who tried to destroy this company and your own career is you, Bianca. I checked the edit history on your computer as soon as you left the meeting. It shows you were the one who inserted that faulty clause into the Chinese contract." Bianca went pale, her breathing erratic. She stammered, trying to protest. "It was just a small mistake. I didn't mean to—" "No, Bianca," Michael interrupted firmly. "That was an intentional act of sabotage, born of jealousy and selfishness. I'm deeply disappointed. I thought you were different. But now I see you don't belong here any longer." Bianca took a step back, as if struck in the chest. Her face burned red, tears of fury welling in her eyes as she hissed, "How dare you do this to me, Michael? After everything I've done for you, for her, a lowly maid." Michael stood tall, voice unwavering. "Bianca, you're fired, effective immediately. I will not condone prejudice, selfishness, or sabotage. Please leave now." Bianca glared at him, hatred and despair flashing in her eyes. Then she spun on her heel and stormed toward the door. Pausing in the doorway, she turned back and, voice cutting cold as ice, warned, "You'll regret this decision, both you and her. You'll pay for this." Michael said nothing as the door slammed shut behind her, the sound echoing like a final verdict. The office fell into a heavy silence. Michael sank into his chair for the first time in days, utterly spent. He knew he'd done the right thing, but couldn't shake the sorrow and disappointment he felt for having misjudged someone he once held in high regard. As for Bianca, once she stepped out onto the sidewalk, her fury peaked. Standing before the towering Langford Dynamics building, she glared up at it with bone-deep hatred. In her mind, she swore she'd never forgive Emma Johnson, who had stolen everything Bianca believed was rightfully hers. "Just wait, Emma Johnson," Bianca muttered, voice tight with vengeance. "I won't let this go." And with that, she stalked away, her mind already spinning a darker, more ruthless plan of revenge than ever before. Just minutes after Bianca's departure, life at Langford Dynamics settled back into a routine, but now it moved to a new, vibrant, and powerful rhythm. The once toxic tension gave way to openness and mutual respect, as if Bianca's exit had paved the way for an entirely new chapter. In her new role as Director of International Coordination, Emma quickly proved that Michael's trust was well placed. During those first weeks, though initially overwhelmed by the sheer volume of work, she adapted with remarkable speed. She not only excelled at managing complex international affairs, but also impressed the leadership with her organizational prowess, strategic insights, and masterful communication skills. On a busy Monday morning, Emma entered the company's grand boardroom in a sleek business suit instead of her old uniform. Colleagues watched her, not with the suspicion or condescension of before, but with genuine admiration. As she began her presentation on a new Asia Market Partnership Plan, the room fell utterly silent. Every word she spoke was clear, persuasive, and inspiring. Michael sat at the far end of the table, quietly observing Emma with pride and warmth. A new but deeply satisfying sense of shared responsibility welled up in him. Emma's presence hadn't just solved business challenges. More importantly, she had rekindled values he'd long forgotten. As they worked together, Michael and Emma grew closer. Lengthy meetings often turned into heartfelt conversations. Michael, for the first time, opened up about his own difficult childhood and the invisible pressures he'd borne while building the Langford Dynamics empire. Emma listened with empathy, understanding the wounds and struggles he'd endured. In turn, Emma confided in Michael about her late father, who had nurtured her love of languages, and the sacrifice she'd made to leave university and care for her younger sister. These personal stories forged a special bond between them, transforming their relationship from mere colleagues into true friends and partners on a challenging journey. With each successful deal and strengthened international alliance, Emma's reputation grew exponentially. Within months, her name, Emma Johnson, became a symbol at Langford Dynamics of professionalism, intelligence, and the triumph over societal prejudice. She not only transformed her own life, but inspired everyone around her. Recognizing Emma's extraordinary contributions and influence, Michael made a historic decision. At a special leadership meeting, he formally proposed renaming the company Langford and Johnson International, a move that honored Emma's impact and sent a clear message about the firm's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. When Emma heard the announcement, she sat stunned, emotion choking her. She had never imagined her name would stand alongside Michael's on the building facade she once could only enter through a side door. Now, not only could she confidently walk through the main entrance, but she was also becoming co-founder of a globally recognized brand. Meanwhile, in a small apartment not far from headquarters, Bianca stared at her laptop, eyes fixed on the front-page news of the company's renaming in a leading business journal. Rage, humiliation, and jealousy surged within her. To Bianca, the renaming was a crushing blow to her pride, deepening her hatred for Emma. She slammed the laptop shut, hands trembling with fury. "Emma Johnson, you think you've won?" Bianca hissed, her gaze dark and menacing. "This game is far from over." Bianca's determination for revenge burned brighter than ever. She vowed not only to undermine Emma's rising career, but to destroy everything Emma had built. Back at the new offices, Emma and Michael stood side by side at the expansive window, gazing out at the city skyline. Soft sunlight filtered through, illuminating their faces in a perfect tableau of success and genuine friendship. Emma turned to Michael with a warm, vibrant smile. "Thank you, Michael, for believing in me and giving me this opportunity. I never imagined I'd be standing here today." Michael returned her smile with heartfelt warmth, his eyes filled with respect and gratitude. "No, Emma. In truth, I'm the one who should be thanking you. You not only saved the company, but you reminded me of the values I'd lost sight of. I'm proud to call you my partner and friend." They stood together, savoring a rare moment of peace after a whirlwind journey. Yet, deep in Emma's heart, a quiet premonition lingered, that the greatest storms still lay ahead. After the company was officially renamed Langford and Johnson International, Emma began to ponder more deeply the social responsibilities that her new position carried. From her spacious, light-filled office, she often looked down at the bustling streets below, where she once walked each day in her humble, invisible role. Each time, she thought of people like her former self, immigrant youth, Black young people raised amid prejudice and discrimination, constantly facing barriers in their pursuit of dreams. One late afternoon, as the city sky faded to pale orange, Emma knocked softly on Michael's office door. He looked up at her with his usual warm expression and a genuine smile. "Emma, come in. What's on your mind?" She stepped inside and sat in the chair opposite him, hesitating for a moment before speaking. "I have an idea, Michael. I'd like to propose establishing a corporate charity fund, Langford and Johnson International Foundation, to support immigrant youth, Black young people, and anyone who's faced discrimination like I once did." Michael leaned back in his chair, listening intently, his eyes bright with admiration. "Emma, that's a wonderful idea. You've been thinking about this for a while, haven't you?" She smiled and nodded. "I've actually dreamed of this since my days as a housekeeper. I know so many talented, determined young people who never get the chance to shine, simply because of their skin color or background. I want to create something practical to give them better opportunities." Michael was silent for a moment, then nodded decisively. "Emma, you have my full support. Let's launch the foundation immediately." Within weeks, the Langford and Johnson International Foundation was launched, dedicated to young people facing hardship due to their background, ethnicity, or financial circumstances. Emma took the helm, crafting detailed plans for scholarships, soft skills training programs, and free language and diplomacy courses. As soon as news of the foundation broke in the media, community support exploded. Stories of Emma Johnson, the once anonymous housekeeper who had become an emblem of resilience, inspired thousands of young people. Donors and businesses of all sizes reached out to contribute. Universities and educational organizations eagerly partnered with the foundation to support students, immigrant youth, and other marginalized groups. Emma's direct talks with young people became standing-room-only events. Standing before hundreds of hopeful but anxious faces, she shared her life story unabashedly, her pain, her interrupted dreams, and, most importantly, how she overcame prejudice to get where she was. "I used to be just like you," Emma said, voice brimming with emotion. "I believed my life couldn't change. But then I realized we're stronger than the limits others place on us. Believe in yourself, act with perseverance, and remember, you are the one who decides your own life." Her heartfelt words touched every listener. Emma became a living role model, proof that all barriers can be broken with courage and determination. At one of Emma's talks in a local community center, Michael watched from the back of the room, quietly absorbing her message. His eyes glowed with genuine admiration, not only for her professional talent but for her compassion and empathy. Afterward, as Emma shook hands with departing attendees, Michael approached her and said softly, "Emma, you've truly inspired them, and me. I admire you not just for what you've done for the company, but for how you're changing lives." Emma met his gaze, warmth and sincerity shining in her eyes. "Michael, I'm just doing what I know is right. These young people deserve a chance to be seen and to live the lives they dream of." Meanwhile, in a small cafe, Bianca sat silently, eyes icy as she watched a news report celebrating Emma's successes and the new foundation. Each compliment directed at Emma felt like a knife twisting in her heart, fueling her hatred and jealousy. "Emma Johnson, you think you're a hero?" Bianca hissed to herself, her gaze dark and menacing. "I'll never let you enjoy this victory. You'll pay for everything you took from me." She slammed her coffee cup down and rose, stepping out with a dark plan forming in her mind. For Bianca, revenge against Emma had become her very purpose. Unaware of the brewing threat, Emma returned home at day's end in peaceful contentment, never guessing that, miles away, Bianca was plotting the most dangerous scheme yet, one that could endanger everything Emma had built. While Emma was still basking in the peaceful happiness brought by her foundation's success, she had no idea that, in the shadows, Bianca was quietly plotting a dangerous scheme. After weeks of covert preparation, Bianca decided to exact her revenge one late evening. She opened her laptop, logged into the anonymous social media accounts she had set up, and began posting a flurry of entirely fabricated rumors about Emma. The posts were crafted with a veneer of truth mixed with wild exaggerations, designed to create a perfect smear campaign to tarnish Emma's reputation. Within hours, social media was flooded with false headlines such as "Emma Johnson exploits CEO Michael Langford's trust to seize her position," "The truth behind Langford and Johnson International's new director," and from housekeeper to executive, the scandalous relationship between Emma Johnson and Michael Langford. Every share felt like a knife to Emma's honor and self-worth. The next morning, Emma woke to find hundreds of unread messages and missed calls from friends and colleagues. As she scrolled through the posts about herself, she felt her world crumble. Cruel comments, baseless accusations, and whispered doubts made her heart pound and her breathing shallow. In less than a day, the media crisis had engulfed Langford and Johnson International. Calls from news outlets demanding comment poured in, and the company's stock plummeted under public pressure. Emma sat alone in her office, the weight of it all bearing down on her. The malicious words kept replaying in her mind, and she began to doubt herself. A fleeting thought crossed her mind. Would giving up this position and all of this pain? Just then, Michael's office door opened quietly. He stepped in, his face serious but full of genuine concern. "Emma, I've read everything that's been posted. I want you to know I believe in you completely, and I'm on your side no matter what." Emma looked up at him, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to get through this, Michael. What they're saying, it hurts so much." Michael gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady and reassuring. "Emma, don't let them win. This is nothing but a nasty plot by jealous, cowardly people. I promise you, I'll do everything in my power to find out who's behind this." That very afternoon, Michael held an emergency press conference. Standing before dozens of cameras, his voice rang out firm and resolute. "I want to make it absolutely clear that the rumors circulating online about Emma Johnson are completely false. Emma is an outstanding, honest woman and an invaluable asset to our company. We will not allow these fabricated stories to harm her reputation." He scanned the assembled reporters with a challenging glare. "We are working closely with authorities to track down the source of these attacks. I assure you, the culprit will be held accountable under the law." Immediately afterward, Michael mobilized all available resources to trace the origin of the fake posts. Cybersecurity experts were brought in, and before long, they discovered the anonymous accounts were being operated from a familiar IP address, the very apartment where Bianca lived. When Michael learned of this, anger flared within him. The betrayal by someone he had once trusted drove him to swift action. He called the company's legal team to initiate proceedings against Bianca without delay. Meanwhile, in her apartment, Bianca sat smirking at the cruel comments flooding the web, until her phone rang. The voice on the other end informed her that Langford and Johnson International had launched an official investigation. Her smile vanished. Her hand shook so badly she dropped the phone. Panic seized her, but beneath it all, her hatred for Emma only grew hotter. "This can't be happening. I won't be caught this easily," Bianca muttered, her voice trembling with rage. "Emma, this isn't over. You're going to pay for everything you took from me." That night, Bianca hastily packed her things and fled her apartment. She was determined not to be caught, and to concoct an even darker, more ruthless plan to destroy Emma, the woman she blamed for all her own failures. Back at the office, Emma sat surrounded by thousands of messages of support from friends, colleagues, and strangers alike. Their words reminded her she was not alone in this fight. More importantly, she realized she could not give in or back down, because so many young people were looking to her as a symbol of hope and strength. Emma clenched her fist and vowed to herself, no matter what happens next, she would weather this storm and emerge even stronger. As Emma struggled to regain her composure and faith in herself amid the media storm, Michael quietly coordinated with the company's IT and internal security teams. determined to uncover the truth behind this scandal. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at Langford and Johnson International was especially tense. Every employee knew that the company's reputation and Emma's honor, someone they all respected, was on the line. Michael worked tirelessly, scrutinizing every detail of the case, reviewing evidence, tracing IP addresses, and reconstructing timelines. Then, one early morning, as sunlight streamed through the office's large windows, Michael received the investigation team's official report. Holding the thick dossier in his hands, he felt his heart pound as he read the clear conclusion on the page. All false and defamatory posts originated from fake social media accounts created and managed by Bianca Ellis, former assistant to CEO Michael Langford. Michael let out a long breath. The truth, painful but undeniable, brought both relief and heartbreak. He had never wanted to believe that Bianca, whom he trusted completely, could stoop to such cruelty. Yet the evidence was irrefutable. That very afternoon, Michael convened a special press conference in the company's largest auditorium, inviting reporters from every major outlet. Standing before dozens of cameras and microphones, he spoke with strength and clarity. "Today, I stand before you to set the record straight about the recent attacks on Emma Johnson's character, attacks that have unfairly tarnished the reputation of our co-founder. After a thorough and careful investigation, we have conclusive proof that every false rumor circulating online was disseminated by a former employee, Bianca Ellis." He raised the dossier for all to see. Inside these files are the verified IP logs, access histories, and the fake accounts Bianca created to spread these lies. We will be handing all documentation over to law enforcement to pursue legal action. Bianca Ellis will be held fully accountable under the law for her malicious deeds. As camera flashes staccatoed around him, Michael paused, and his expression softened when he spoke of Emma. "I also want to affirm that Emma Johnson is the most dedicated, honest professional I have ever had the privilege to work with. It pains me deeply that she was targeted in this way. On behalf of Emma, her family, and everyone affected by this regrettable incident, I offer my sincerest apology." Almost immediately, the media and online chatter shifted. Articles quickly spread the truth, and those who had doubted or criticized Emma publicly apologized and rallied behind her. The hashtag #WeStandWithEmma shot to the top of social feeds, calling for fairness, respect, and support. Alone in her office, Emma read the flood of supportive messages from friends, colleagues, and strangers alike. Overcome with emotion, she wept, grateful that truth and kindness had prevailed over deceit. Meanwhile, Bianca was summoned by the police to assist with the investigation. With no way to deny the overwhelming evidence, she was forced to confess. Pale and terrified, she was led from her home in handcuffs as cameras rolled. Images of Bianca's arrest dominated headlines and social feeds. A bitter, humiliating end for someone who once had everything but lost herself to blind jealousy. That evening, Michael entered Emma's office to find her deep in thought at her desk. He sat down beside her and gently offered comfort. "Emma, the truth is finally out. I know how deeply this wounded you, but please know you have the unwavering support of all of us." Emma wiped away her last tears and managed a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, Michael, for always believing in me and standing up for me when I needed it most. Without you, I don't know if I'd have found the strength to get through this." Michael looked into her eyes and smiled warmly. "Emma, you're stronger than you realize, and you're never alone. We'll always stand by you." Across town, in her holding cell, Bianca sat in silence, her face blank. Her career, reputation, and pride evaporated in an instant. Only then did she fully grasp that her own hatred and envy had ultimately led to her downfall. For Emma, the storm had finally passed, but she knew deep down that the ordeal had made her stronger, more resilient, and a true symbol of perseverance, courage, and justice. After the storms, the atmosphere at Langford and Johnson International gradually returned to a steady, more powerful rhythm than ever before. The hurts and pressures that once rocked Emma and the entire company have now become invaluable lessons, making the firm stronger and more resilient in the face of future challenges. Thanks to Emma's outstanding leadership and timely decisiveness, the company not only recovered swiftly, but also expanded rapidly on the international stage. Partners from around the world, especially in China, have come to admire and trust Langford and Johnson completely. Billion-dollar contracts have been closed, cementing the company's status as a global market leader. Emma is now a symbol not just within the company, but across the United States. She frequently appears on international panels, in reputable media outlets, and at major conferences, representing the strength and resilience of Black women in business. With every success she achieves, thousands of young women nationwide gain confidence in their own potential and feel empowered to overcome the social barriers they once thought would hold them back. One peaceful weekend afternoon, Emma and Michael sat across from each other in their favorite downtown cafe. They shared plans for the company's future and personal thoughts they'd never spoken aloud before. Michael looked at Emma with gentle affection and said, "Emma, I've never told you this before, but I want you to know that your presence has changed my life in ways I never imagined." Emma's eyes filled with emotion as she replied, "Me too, Michael. You were the first to believe in me when the whole world turned away. I know we share a special bond." They fell silent for a moment, weighing their words. Then Michael spoke softly. "Emma, I treasure our relationship, but I think the best course for us is to keep this affection as a close friendship. What we're building here is far greater and more important." Emma smiled and nodded in agreement, her eyes warm and sincere. "I completely agree, Michael. Our friendship is what makes us strongest and most effective. I believe that together, we'll continue to create even greater value for the company and the community." Michael squeezed Emma's hand in a gesture of commitment, his eyes shining with deep gratitude and respect. Time flew by, and Langford and Johnson International continued to thrive. Its successive wins on the global stage only underscored Emma's influence as one of America's most outstanding Black women leaders. Alongside the company's remarkable growth, the Langford and Johnson Foundation also expanded, opening new charitable centers across the U.S. One of the largest was built right in the city's heart, a place where once forgotten young people could rise up and chase their dreams without limits. At the grand opening of this flagship center, Emma stood before hundreds of enthusiastic yet anxious young people. As she stepped onto the podium, the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the small but powerful woman before them. Looking each person in the eye, Emma spoke softly, yet with tremendous strength and inspiration. "Dear young friends, I once stood right where you are. I believed the social limits placed on me would define my life. But I learned that wasn't true. Never let anyone else set the boundaries for your dreams. You have the right to walk into any room in this world, and the world will adapt to your presence." Her words resonated throughout the hall, infusing every listener with a surge of invisible strength. Thunderous applause followed, as faces lit up with renewed hope and determination. In a distant corner, Michael watched Emma shine on stage, pride illuminating his smile. He knew choosing Emma as a true partner and friend was the best decision he'd ever made. And in a cold prison cell, Bianca sat staring at Emma's image on the tiny TV screen. At last, she realized a bitter truth. Hatred and envy will never lead to success. The career and fame she once pursued had evaporated, leaving only regret and remorse. The ceremony ended in joy and hope as Emma descended the stage, embraced by dozens of grateful young people. Tears of emotion and genuine smiles filled her heart with happiness and pride. She looked up at the clear blue sky beyond the windows, knowing this was only the beginning of a new journey. A journey she would continue to fight for, to bring goodness to those once left behind. And from this moment on, Emma knew for certain she would never be invisible again. We've witnessed the extraordinary journey of Emma Johnson, from an unseen housekeeper to an international business leader. Her story reminds us that no matter where you start, if you believe in yourself and persevere in your dreams, the world will adapt to your presence. How about you? Have you ever overcome a limit someone else set for you? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like and share this video with friends and family to spread positive inspiration. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful, moving stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.